When somebody says the word ghost, you might think of white wispy shapes floating between walls, or even soldiers on a battlefield. But a London bus is probably never something that springs to mind. That's just one of our 5 ghostly vehicles in this episode. Kicking us off with one of the oddest incidents of ghost vehicles is Eastern Airlines Flight 401. A tri-star airliner that crashed into a Florida swamp in December 1972. The crash killed 101 people, including pilot Bob Loft and flight engineer Don Repo. The catastrophe rapidly gained an uncanny reputation. This was not because the plane itself was haunted, after all it was crushed to pieces, but because it spawned more haunting aircraft. Several working parts of the plane were salvaged from the crash site and later fitted into other planes, where the crews soon reported strange visions. The ghosts of Loft and Repo were frequently claimed to be quietly sitting among the passengers, and occasionally engaging the crew in conversation. The apparitions were so clear and solid that they were believed to be working crew until they disappeared in thin air. The scary ghost crew was usually found in or near components rescued from 401. Once, one of them approached a flight engineer and assured him that he had already completed the pre-flight check for him. Another time, Don Repo's face was said to have appeared in an oven, salvaged, of course, from Flight 401, warning 3 crew members of a fire that would break out during the trip. Following an engine fire, the plane was forced to abort the final stage of its journey. Eastern Airlines has made no official comments about the phenomenon. Nonetheless, the ghosts escorting Flight 401 are claimed to be something of a legend within the corporation, with whispers circulating that even the airline's vice president has encountered them once. Number 4. The Black Volga. During the 1960s and 1970s, those living under Soviet authority had plenty to worry about. From the Cold War to the numerous shortcomings in their own governmental, their daily lives were infused with small doses of horror. However, there was one entity that was really frightening: the Black Volga. No one knew who drove the Black Volga. Some claimed it was priests, some said nuns, and some swore it was Satan worshippers. Some even claimed the devil was behind the wheel. The Black Volga was a Volga limousine with white rims and drapes that appeared out of nowhere. Sometimes its rearview mirrors functioned as horns. It abducted children and murdered anyone who confronted it. Nobody knew why the children were taken. Perhaps they were sold to wealthy Arabs who required their blood to treat leukemia, or the youngsters were just culled for their organs. The tale of the Black Volga extended over Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Poland, and Mongolia. Although there is no strong proof to corroborate or refute the narrative, it is worth mentioning that Volga limousines were the most expensive vehicles available to the Soviets at the time. As a result, they were mostly led by polytrucks, Soviet political commissars, and other Communist Party officials, the very class responsible for the people's predicament. Number 3. Silverpilen. Stockholm, Sweden's pleasant and prosperous metropolis conceals a gruesome secret in its subway system. The sparkling silver ghost train, known as Silverpilen, or the Silver Arrow, lurks nearby, stopping at random stations at irregular intervals. Its interiors alternate between being utterly vacant and filled with phantom passengers. If you're unlucky enough to board, you could end up at Kimlinge, the metro station of the dead. Silverpilen, whether haunted or not, is a real train. It's an experimental vehicle constructed from 8 aluminum-colored C5 cars. While Silverpilen was never mass-produced, this test unit was occasionally utilized as a backup train during rush hour. Because the train was not in regular operation, its cars lack advertisements, and the only internal marks are remnants of partially cleaned graffiti. Its unpainted silvery appearance also deviates significantly from the typical color scheme of Stockholm subway trains. As a result, arriving at a station may be an unsettling experience. This might give a passenger an unpleasant shock, especially after a long night of drinking. Although Silverpilen was only rarely in active duty and was completely retired in 1996, it developed a terrifying reputation and is still said to haunt subway workers in abandoned tunnels to this day. Number 2. The Jumping Car of Cape Town. It's usually a bad sign when your car begins to move on its own. A family from Cape Town, South Africa, and their visitors discovered this the hard way when they awoke to a tremendous crash in the middle of the night. Hurrying outside, they discovered that the visitors' Renault was jerkily hopping around the yard, eventually smashing a solid fence and coming to a stop. Initially, they suspected that someone had attempted to take the car, but no driver could be found. The boundary of their yard had not been entered, the car was locked, and the windows were still intact. Even the handbrake was still engaged. The automobile has been traveling by itself. When the police arrived, they didn't believe a word of it, until the car fired up right in front of them. The Renault screamed to life and began to bounce backwards until it was halted by a hibiscus tree. Renault offered an explanation that the incidents were triggered by a rusty starting cable. However, they were unable to explain the car's alleged roaring sounds. If you enjoy our channel, why not give us a thumbs up and subscribe? Number 1. The Ghostly London Bus. In 1934, a London driver made an emergency maneuver while driving down Cambridge Gardens. He met a horrific death when his car collided with a wall and exploded in flames. Although no explanation for his actions could be uncovered, numerous witnesses came forward and suggested a possible cause for the hapless driver's death: the Phantom Bus of London. The ghost bus, allegedly witnessed by numerous London residents between the 1930s and the 1990s, is a very real-looking red London double-decker carrying the line number 7. It always arrives around 1:15 a.m., rumbling along the road directly at panicked drivers. Its lights are never turned on, and the driver is never visible. As the anxious drivers steer to avoid a collision and turn to look behind them, the bus is nowhere to be found or heard.